So I'm assuming you're like, where do you stand on the burning your bust? That's the biggest debate going on Twitch right now. It's just burning your busters versus neoliberals versus pan-liberals versus Posadists.
Yeah. I mean, I could do the like super short version, but like I kind of prefer the like scenic route, if that's okay.
Yeah, you have time. I'm not doing anything. I live here now.
Yeah, right. Because I think like given some of what I'm going to say, I think it kind of matters how you say it. Mm-hmm. And like I see a lot of people who I sort of agree with being very tone deaf about how to say it. Right?
Okay, good. Yeah, no. I'm excited to hear your perspective. That's kind of why I wanted to bring you on.
Okay, cool. So I guess, I mean, I'm enough of a Francophile that like where my mind goes when I think about this is like that election was like 2002 or something in France when it was with the only two candidates it's always two candidates who make it to the runoff, but it was Jacques Chirac versus Jean-Marie Le Pen. Mm-hmm. And like there were like literally like French leftist parties putting up posters in Paris saying vote for the crook, not the fascist. Mm-hmm. And that seems like a
similar to Marine Le Pen and Macron, right?
Yeah, same kind of deal. I mean, like mm-hmm. Macron is obviously horrible, but I don't know if he's quite, it's a like slightly different vibe. But but it's similar deal, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, vote for the neo, not the fascist.
Yeah. And like I think one really interesting difference between France and the US is that even though the French left does often find itself, well, not often, but like we just named two situations, right? Mm-hmm. Like does sometimes find itself with the same kind of like just dismal like choices, mm-hmm. that we do in America. In France, it seems like there's a much more willingness and much more, I don't know, room maybe culturally mm-hmm. to just be like really honest about what you're doing in that choice, right? Like the way that like I watched about as much as I could take, of mm-hmm. the Bernie Biden stream,
Yeah, wow, that was tough.
It wasn't fun viewing, but
I can't even make a joke about it. It was just hard to sit through.
yeah, it was hard to sit through, totally, yeah. And like because American political culture is what it is, like he had to do this like thing where, I mean, even though actually I was surprised by how little to it, relatively speaking, like overwhelmingly the emphasis was on, Trump is really bad, right?
Yeah, of course. Which is what I think we're all going to coalesce around soon.
Yeah, I agree. But like, because American political culture is what it was, he had to kind of do this thing where like, you, instead of just being like Biden is awful, but Trump is a lot worse. So, do harm reduction and like help create better conditions for, like choose the enemy you want to fight against, mm-hmm. and vote for Biden, at least if you live in a swing state, which is not too far, like in the Macron, the Macron-Marie Le Pen election, mm-hmm. Mélenchon, who was like, very roughly the Bernie equivalent figure in that equation, like he was like super French about it when they asked him, like who's going to vote for the runoff. He was like, look, I'm going to vote. It's not going to be for Le Pen.
Mm-hmm. Is that going to be your official position? Or are you going to adopt like, I'm going to vote, it's not going to be for Trump?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, mm-hmm. Like, I think I don't want to, like, what I'm never going to do is like yell at people for like being like third party voters,
mm-hmm. Green Party voters, or
like, non-voters, third party voters, whatever. I'm never going to participate in some campaign of like trying to like shame them and yell at them and tell them that they're privileged and to vote for, if Hallie Hawkins or whatever is a, mm-hmm. Whoever the PSL person is is a vote for Trump or any of that stuff. for a couple reasons. One of which is that I think anybody with like I would think that even like an alien with like 5 minutes acquaintance with human psychology would be able to see how counterproductive that is.
Mhm.
All it does is
It's odd you say that because you just called out like a good swath of the quote left on Twitch.
No, I mean, I realize that's like the approach of like 95% of the people who I guess technically agree with me, but then,
I didn't know you were here to salt the earth, Ben.
But like it's incredibly stupid and counterproductive. Like it
I
just
agree.
hardens people in their positions,
And I'm sure you read that Glenn Greenwald article in The Intercept that came out that shows it's disproportionately typically people who are marginalized by society who do not vote or feel that they're not represented by either party.
Oh yeah, totally right. Like the people who are most likely to vote are like suburbanites. The whole privilege thing is backwards anyway.
Yeah, that's totally backwards.
It's totally backwards. And anyway, it's a stupid like it's just a stupid game to play. Like like if it's instead of actually like arguing with like giving people good reasons to think that they have the wrong position, right? Just like jumping to the conclusion that they've been blinded by their privilege into taking that position. I mean, it's unprovable anyway, and two, you're very unlikely to ever actually convince anyone that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the joke I made a few days ago on Twitter was I think that Mehdi Hassan is going to single-handedly double the third-party vote, by like ham-handedly wandering around yelling at people,
Yep.
like about their privilege.
That seems to be his MO.
It's so asinine. I have no I don't understand how he doesn't get this. And this isn't like, because you'll notice this isn't how people try to get votes from any other group.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody, like no Democrat has ever tried to appeal to moderate Republicans by screaming at them about their privilege, right?
No shit. It's a uniquely privileged position, right? To out-privilege each other.
And of course, the moderate Republicans are actually much, in a much more structurally advantaged position, right?
Yep.
It's ridiculous. That's not how you win people's votes. That's not how any of this works, right? I mean, like you try. I mean, first of all, if you're like an actual supporter of the candidate, which obviously I'm not, I think he's a piece of shit. But like, if you're an actual, it's a credible rape accusation. He
seems to be getting more credible.
He didn't just go along with the vote for the war in Iraq, which would be bad enough, right?
Right.
That's basically what Hillary Clinton did.
Yeah.
But he was like one of the central people pushing it on the Democratic side.
Or the bailouts as well.
The bailouts, all of like basically. If you read like Radley Balco's book, The Rise of the Warrior Cop, basically like Joe Biden is like one of the villains of that book, he's he's a horrible.
I haven't read that, but I've seen enough clips of Joe Biden basically affirmatively asking for tougher and tougher penalties historically, throughout United States history, especially in relation to what he considered violent crime and gang members, asking for the death penalty at times, right?
Totally, yeah. And he was very, he was you could see old clips of him enthusing about like cops like driving tanks into like drug houses or whatever. It's like, no, he was one of the biggest enthusiasts for like tough on crime legislation. Originally with the war on drugs and then with the war on terror. He he's an author of the crime bill. He's at least taken credit for the Patriot Act on the grounds that there was legislation that he sponsored that was very similar earlier.
What are your
I don't think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it.
Oh no, I was going to ask. What are your thoughts on the accelerationist?
Good
theory.
Yep.
That we got a proto-fascist in the office right now, that another 4 years of, say, another centrist neoliberal will simply set the stage for the worst form of Donald Trump, which would be an actual fascist.
Yeah, good. So I think, so I mean, like this is a good transition because like, I've just sort of rattled off, some of his crimes. Not all of them, you know.
There are many. We haven't talked about Anita Hill or Clarence Thomas. I know we could do a full on like 3 hours of just listing why Joe Biden sucks.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I think it's important to start there, because I think if you insult people's intelligence by saying like, he's maybe not perfect, you know, he's like you're not going to get everything you want, but like, you know, like you sort of insinuate that he's kind of sort of on the same side, but like just like, you know, 15% less awesome or something, then I think anybody who knows anything is going to immediately detect bullshit, and they're not going to listen to the rest of what you have to say, right?
True.
Like, you know, I mean, I think you have
need
to
qualifiers.
You have to start with a frank acknowledgement of who and what Joe Biden is, and that if your strategy is about like pushing him to the left or whatever, then, you know, I'm not optimistic about that, right? Like, I think he'll throw a few rhetorical bones during the campaign. If anything, it's been amazing how like unsubstantive some of those bones have been, right? It's like, we're gonna lower Medicare age from 65 to 60, because that was really our main concern, is that people in the 60 to 64 age group. But yeah, so given that, right, why do I still think, I mean, look, if you live in like New York, do whatever the hell you want on the top of your ballot, it couldn't matter less, right? Like just take everything under there seriously, but like, you know, at that point it's a symbolic gesture one way or the other, so who cares, right? But if you live in Michigan, where I grew up, or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania,
one of the 5 swing states essentially. I mean, and or even like, God knows, right? I mean, unexpected things happen. I think you can, you know, I think there are like probably some other states that there are some purple states that used to be blue states that need to be taken back. Like, you know, no question.
There are some formerly blue and now purple states that could swing back the other way. There are also some formerly red states that have gotten a lot purpler. Georgia is one of those. Trump won by a surprisingly small margin in 2016. Like, granted, it's a little bit complicated because Gary Johnson got like 3% of the vote, but Trump got like literally less than 50.5%. So, you know, I mean, granted, I assume most of those Johnson voters who would have been their second choice, but you know, it's enough on the line that you know, assuming
it's
they'll mail me.
So hard to tell with libertarianism in the United States. Like, how do there's no rhyme or reason to it. Yeah,
sure. Right. I mean, whatever. I mean, who knows what's going on in their heads? But but like, you know, but like it's close. But like,
true. No, you're right. Yeah, of course.
The margin last time was close enough that if they you know, assuming they mail me a ballot, right? I'm certainly not going to risk the plague for the sake of Joe Biden. But
yeah, that's if the post office exists in November. So have fun with that, Ben.
Still exists by November. They mail me a ballot. I will hold my nose like a good French communist and, and vote for our Chirac Macron figure. Yeah, But look, I mean, so why do I say that despite all of his crimes? And I think part of the answer has to do with your second question about accelerationism.
Okay.
So I think that the history is not kind to that position. So and this is important to talk about because I see this a lot on left Twitter.
Yep.
People will say that like I see a lot of people who, and I'm not saying this is an insult, right? Like, I think
of course
we obviously need more people who are like relatively new to left politics to become leftists. That's the whole point, right? But they had but like, I think a lot of this is like people who are relatively new to this stuff saying things like, oh, you know, we'll kind of rip off the Band-Aid. This will be like the final destruction of the Democratic Party, and then we could have like a, you know, whatever, or like. This will be the final, at least, destruction of like democratic centrism or something like that.
I've heard both. I've heard accelerate. Yeah, doing that little raccoon meme. I've heard both. I've heard that it's going to destroy the Democratic Party, and that's great. I've also heard that doing it will just set us up for the biggest pendulum swing of all time, which is that we had a black president, which led the way to Donald Trump, which is incredibly reductionist. I'm not trying to make that argument. But now we're going to get an actual fascist because we've allowed Joe Biden to kind of, milk toast his way through the next 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, look, I guess try to steel man this, right?
Sure.
I mean, like, I think the most plausible part of it is the idea that, I don't think that, like, I think the extent to which the rise of Trump is linked to, like, having a black president is overstated, whatever. But but the most plausible part of it is the idea that Biden certainly wouldn't fix anything, and and he would, because he represents all the conditions that led to Trump in the first place, that after 4 years or 8 years of Biden, that, like, God knows, maybe the Republicans are just going to, like, nominate, like, a literal, like, flaming chainsaw that says racist things, right? That's like, I don't think that concern is unfounded. I would say, okay, great. So let's, let's make sure we find a good candidate to, who actually has a chance of beating Flaming Chainsaw Man, right? Somebody with Bernie-like politics, or maybe the left of that, who can, who would actually be effective against that, right? We shouldn't just be fatalists about, okay, the next Trump will win. I think we can, maybe the next Bernie can beat him, but I think that this idea that if Trump wins, it's going to be, like, long-term good for the left, that, like, it's going to, because that'll destroy the Democratic Party or Democratic centrism or whatever.
Oh, it's Joker theory, right?
Yeah. And I think if you look at the history of that, right? I mean, like, it recently admitted to how old I am, and so, I can vividly remember, George W. Bush being elected, or, elected and then, reelected. And
thanks to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I remember that part. I mean, my mom explained to me, it's like, oh, the court is deciding. And I was like, oh, so democracy, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. What I really remember is watching, because I was, like, staying up with my, sister, my brother-in-law, watching TV all night, because, waiting for the result, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that George W. Bush saying on TV that his brother Jeb had or not Jeb, Jeb was the one who's governor of Florida, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeb Bush.
Yeah. Yep.
Jeb.
So that he'd spoken to Jeb, and Jeb had assured him that he won Florida.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. But look.
But in relation to that, I thought you were going to pull up the Chomsky quote, because Chomsky just said this recently, right? Where they said that apparently, and I know this is Godwin's law, but he was like, a lot of people on the left said that about the Nazis, that the Nazis were going to allow us to now have an even further pendulum swing after that, because
knock Hitler uns, those after Hitler us, those the third period communist slogan. In Germany, and without obviously it's not a 1-to-1, right? Trump is not Hitler, but but I think there's still some lessons there, and I think that, like, even just in terms of more kind of pedestrian analogies, just in recent American history, like the election of George W. Bush, or whatever, the empowerment of George W. Bush twice. Didn't lead to some great destruction of democratic centrism. It had exactly the opposite effect, right? It made the Democratic base so desperate to go back to normal and get rid of Bush that they were willing to nominate John Kerry, who had voted for, like, all of the major policy initiatives of the Bush administration, but, like, on the theory that they were going to, like, out-patriot, the Republicans, and they were going to win that way, right? Another 4 years, like nobody, like the 2008 primary, right? I mean, like that was, the closest we had, like by then, right? Like Ralph Nader went from being an immensely nationally popular figure, right, for his decades of crusading against GM and all that, to being a pariah.
Yep.
And somebody who was like used to like beat the left.
I distinctly remember that Jon Stewart episode where Michael Moore got on his knees and begged him not to run. Like pleaded. Yeah. He's like, I've never done this before in my life. I'm begging you from the bottom of my heart not to do this because this could result in you negatively affecting this election.
Yeah, Bill Maher, but yeah, that's right.
Oh, sorry, Bill Maher. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So like, and then like by 2008, right, the closest we had to anything that passed for left politics then was John Edwards, right? It's a dismal memory, right? Because like basically, like he would like acknowledge the economic inequality. Like, that was what counted. That was what passed for that back then. But like, Obama didn't have to promise people much of anything, honestly, in terms of policy to get them excited. That it was just like, hey, here's a charismatic Democrat who seems like he can, be historic. So, And then like we have a very recent example that just finished playing out last week, which is that the election of Donald Trump, which if anything was gonna bear this out, that would be it, right? Because like, Donald Trump, who like was famously reluctant to disavow the support of David Duke and the KKK.
Yep.
Like when he ran the first time, who's like who's like such an over the top like caricature of like what like a weird, like right-wing snake oil salesman would be, like, and he was elected. We had the child concentration camps, all that stuff. And not only did that not lead to some pendulum swing or the destruction of the Democratic Party or anything like that, it made people desperate enough for normalcy that they were willing to vote for Joe Biden, who just won the Democratic primary, right?
Hey, you. Yes, you. Do you like cozy environments with other wholesome people? Well, then come join the Discord. It's got a whole bunch of stuff to help you with creative endeavors, such as stock footage, royalty-free music, and an amazing community of people looking to help each other out and uplift your content. Join the Discord now by going to weareserfs.com. That's weareserfs.com.
We would like to thank Miranda Marone. You are our monarch, and we thank you for our indentured servitude. We would like to thank our lords, Ricky Pilgrim, I'm Raft, Michaela Schmid, Tomospin, Farrer Tahone. You are all the pillars of our organization. To our Knights of the Square Table, Paul Parafit, Daniel Kahn, Clement Chutskoff, Alan R., Josh Mickelson, and Dr. Zayas, Cooper Pilot, Andrea Lynn Epperly, Dylan Bythe, Terry, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. And to our merchants, thank you for taking mercy upon us.